6 as amended. This is a public hearing, and comments are invited on any private activity by non-private presented today. In accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, notice of this meeting has been sent to the Star Ledger and the Times at least 48 hours prior to this meeting, and the meeting notice has been posted on the Secretary of State's bulletin board at the Department of State.
Mayor, let's take roll.
Okay, Chairman Kevin Quinn,
Present.
Vice Chairman Charles Sarlo,
Here.
Phil Elagia,
Here.
Virginia Bauer,
Here.
Fred Dumont,
Here.
Aisha Glover,
Present.
Rosemary Hicks,
Here.
Marcia Marley,
Here.
Robert Shimko,
Here.
Commissioner Marlene Careed,
Present.
Commissioner Angelo,
Here.
Jane Rosenblatt,
Here.
Catherine Brennan.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Well, welcome everyone. This is the beginning of a new era. I feel like I woke up in the 21st century. Special welcome to all our new board members. The first item of business is to approve our December board minutes, and then we'll have a second vote to approve our December executive session minutes. I know that many of our new board members cannot participate in that vote. I'm certain we have a quorum here with them not participating.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion.
The second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? All our new board members would be abstaining. Now a motion to approve the December executive session minutes.
Chair, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions?
Abstain. I was not present.
Did you get that, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I'll make some opening comments. The EDA is fulfilling its mission to develop a stronger and fairer economy by diversifying the board to better reflect the diversity of the state and developing new programs and testing new concepts. God bless you. The innovation economy. And we're continuing to improve our internal processes. Again, I'd like to welcome each of our new 5 board members. Jenny Bauer. Jenny is a CEO of a security technology company who develops and markets proprietary software solutions for law enforcement and municipalities. She has a long history of public service, including serving as Commerce Secretary for the state of New Jersey in 3 administrations, where she was the primary business advocate for those administrations. Aisha Glover serves as President and CEO of the Newark Alliance, playing a key role in driving inclusive growth. She has over 15 years of experience in economic development. Aisha's had leadership roles in the Newark Community Economic Development Corporation and the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. Rosemary Hicks is a senior level human resources and business operations consultant with over 15 years of experience working with a range of companies from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. During my brief time at the EDA, I've gotten to know Rosemary from these very meetings, where her constructive feedback and thoughtful comments were greatly valued by this authority. Thank you, Rosemary. Marcia Marley is president of 2 nonprofits that advance progressive policies and work to improve opportunities and resources available to income-constrained families. She advocates for economic and environmental justice and racial and gender equality, among other things. Importantly, Marcia has a graduate degree in economics. You know, we've got some real endorsement here of our credentials. Thank you for making this all look better. And then lastly, Robert Shimko is a business manager and financial secretary of local union IBEW 400, Monmouth and Ocean counties. He advocates for union employees, negotiates collective bargaining agreements, and forges relationships across the construction industry. As we all know, the unions and trades are an important constituency in our great state. There is a handout. Has this handout been made available to board members and members of the public? If you could please pass that around. This is just a summary, and by the way, this is not inclusive of the over 20 programs, new programs and pilots that we tested in 2019. We had a whole suite of small business tools that we either piloted or established programs for, just over a half dozen for small businesses, including the new microloan pilot, which is $1 million pilot, depending on how the pilot plays out over the next several months. That's a program that potentially could be expanded. But as is our way of doing business at the EDA, we test the market, we get good results, we typically do more of it. If we don't get the right kind of results, we either re-engineer the program or we cut the program off. There's a number of innovation economy initiatives. They number almost a dozen. I'll just highlight a couple of these, and a number of them are highlighted on the handout. NJ Ignite, which is a subsidy to folks, emerging businesses, to work and their rental in collaborative workspaces. And importantly, the Angel Investor Tax Credit Program, which effectively was a 10% tax credit for one's investment in the startup economy, is now a 20% tax credit with bonuses for investing in qualified opportunity zones or low-income communities, as well as state-certified minority and women-owned businesses. There are a number of other, again, numbering over a half dozen of other new initiatives to encourage equitable and inclusive growth, including our $15 million brownfield redevelopment loan program. Then lastly, I'd just like to cover, with respect to Public Records Act, we continue to make progress, as I highlighted a couple months ago, on the very substantial backlog that we've had to work through when it comes to OPA requests. Over the last 4 months, we've received, obviously, a fair number of requests. Our OPRA area has been staffed with one professional. I believe I mentioned in the last meeting, we have 4 people handling OPRA requests. We had 109 open or pending requests as of the beginning of September. As of year end, we had 34 open or pending requests, and as of today, we have 24. That's a 75% reduction in our backlog, and I would like to thank the employees of the EDA who have been so tirelessly and dedicated in their focus to be responsive to the public, which we all know makes us a better and stronger organization. So thank you. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First things first, let me join the chairman in welcoming our 5 new members. It's been great to get to know some of you I've known for longer, and some I've gotten to know in the last couple of weeks. We are already a stronger and better organization for your perspectives and experiences. We look forward to having great engagement with all of you during your time on the board, and we really appreciate your service and looking forward to getting these meetings with you and many of us. The chairman mentioned a couple of things that I was going to cover, so I'll zip through them pretty quickly. The Angel Investor Tax Credit law enhancement of that program took effect on New Year's morning. As Chairman mentioned, we think this is really not only a potent but a progressive tool for economic development and inclusive economic development. It's unlike any other Angel Investor Tax Credit around the country, with that bonus feature that the chairman described, for adding 5% for a 5% bonus for both opportunity zone investments, but in my view, more importantly, investments in companies founded by women or by communities of color. That is an deeply underserved part of the innovation economy. This does not by any means mean we are done in our efforts to encourage that part of the innovation ecosystem, but it is a big step in the right direction and a really powerful, potent tool that we'll see, a progressive tool that we'll see take very sizable dividends. The other thing I want to mention, our partners at the Commission on Science, Innovation, and Technology have been very, very active, not the least of which is hiring executive director Judith Sheff, who's sitting two rows behind me. As the members who have been on for longer might recall, and our new members might not know, we have an MOU in place with the Commission to provide a number of support services, including IT and legal and finance and all those sort of unsexy but important things to help them in their early days of the reestablishment of that commission. And that commission is already up and running and has Let's launch some important new programs around the innovation economy. That partnership that we have with CSIT today is really important. I'm privileged to serve on that board along with a number of other of my cabinet colleagues, and so it's a really exciting initiative and opportunity to really advance the innovation economy. The other thing I'll mention just briefly, the Governor and Commissioner Sarangelo and Secretary Smith-Ellis and Education Commissioner Lamont Repollet were with the Governor yesterday in East Brunswick to release this document, which is called Jobs NJ. It's a comprehensive talent strategy. There was work that was done. There's a number of important things I could spend several hours, and I won't, I promise, describing what's in here. There's 17 or 18 different initiatives that are in here that are new, as well as memorializing and describing 25 things, lots of them from the labor department, that have been underway under Governor Murphy's leadership to do things like enhancing apprenticeships, which are up by 58%, the union administration, and really tying together the efforts that our team here at DDA, but more importantly with our partners around state government. At the top of that was labor and workforce development as well as higher education. This was developed by the Jobs and Economic Opportunity Council that I co-chair with Zakiya Smith-Ellis and with Rob, and Marlene is on that board as well as the treasurer. And so it's a really good example, I think, of what the Governor talked about, taking a whole of government approach and breaking down the silos and breaking down the stovepipe between the agencies and the efforts that are underway. It's a really kind of living, breathing, or this glossy printed example of what we mean by that. True, durable, sustainable, inclusive economic development can't happen from one agency alone. It can't happen if we were the best ever economic development organization that didn't have strong partners, we would be insufficiently organized for the challenge. It really requires a comprehensive partnership between lots of different organizations, again, labor at the top of that list, but also higher education and all those folks. So stay tuned. There are a number of programs that are envisioned in here that we will likely be back to this board for approval. Some of them will be launched off out of places like labor and workforce development that won't come to this board, but will be greatly important to our efforts to really tie together and enhance the most important asset in the 21st century economy, which is talent. And making sure particularly that communities that have been not had the same opportunities, that have been systematically ignored or systematically cut out of opportunities in the innovation economy, have an opportunity to get the credentials they need, the skills, and the training they need to be in the 21st century economy. One of the very specific commitments in the governor's plan is a goal of having 250,000 more African American, Latinx, and Native American students complete the credentials they're in the process of getting by 2025. That would be a big deal. That would be a huge enhancement of those folks' opportunity to get the good jobs, the good paying jobs that will hopefully help create here at DDA and also at the administration. So lots going on. This was a big deal yesterday. We're excited about it. I have 2 glossy documents that we measure case every day along with the governor's economic plan from October of 2018. And so with that, I will just say thanks to everyone here at DDA, in particular on the talent plan, Brian Sabina, Justin Ballack, and Jacob Nichols, who worked seamlessly with the governor's office of labor and higher education to bring this to life towards that.
Thank you, Tim. Let's move to the next item on our agenda, authority matters. First item is establishment of the NJ Brownfield Assistance Center at NJIT, presented by Todd Cooper.
Go a little closer, everybody. Good morning, everybody. How are you? So I'll be relatively quick. I talk a little fast, so if I do just do one of these things, and I promise you I will slow down. So incredibly excited to present on the Brownfield Assistance Center today. Thank you to Elizabeth and to Kevin for putting the MOU together. And I have to say this, so excited about the new board members, so congratulations and welcome. We're so excited to have you on board. To make sure everybody's on a level playing field, I'm going to do a little bit of a background on what we've been doing on brownfields, the concept of it, and how we want to move forward. Brownfields are sites that are contaminated or even just perceived to be contaminated, that are interfering with the redevelopment of a property. Brownfields can range in size from a tiny abandoned gas station to a huge former steel mill or factory. Brownfields can be found anywhere, but really are concentrated in urban areas and distressed communities as well. The concept of brownfields is taking something that is bad or harmful and turning that into something that is good for the people who are living in that community. Brownfield redevelopment is at the center of sustainability. It's the intersection where social, economic, and environmental concerns come together in an extremely positive way. As these sites get revitalized and cleaned up, they are strengthening community health, equity, sustainability, and resiliency. As brownfields are cleaned up, they can become anything really from parks to office space to retail. At NJEDA, we are leveraging brownfields to encourage thriving and inclusive New Jersey urban centers and downtowns with a focus on reducing poverty. We are building out a robust program to make brownfield redevelopment as easy as possible for New Jersey communities. And I'm happy to note, by bringing Elizabeth Lindbergh on, that's one of the best things we've actually done to build out an actual department focused on brownfields. She's a champion, she's my hero in this space, she really is the expert not only on this, but incredibly grateful to have her on board. We are looking for ways also beyond financial incentives to encourage and enable New Jersey communities to transform their brownfield sites into community assets. We are so much more than just incentives here at EDA. Brownfields are complex and we need to provide New Jersey communities with tools and resources needed to overcome challenges to successfully redevelop brownfields and probably most importantly to build up community capacity and more so knowledge. One of the ways we can do this is by creating a Brownfields Assistance Center that will fill the gaps and provide services such as free and focused assistance, tools, guidance, resources, strategies, and education and engagement. We are requesting that the board approve a memorandum of understanding between EDA and the New Jersey Institute of Technology for EDA to provide funding for the creation of the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center at NJIT. This center will enable NJIT to provide a variety of technical assistance and resource tools for brownfield communities throughout New Jersey. By way of background, Governor Murphy identified brownfield remediation and redevelopment as an important component of smart planning, which will allow New Jersey to meet its goals for economic growth, minimizing the environmental impacts posed by former industrial properties, and help communities become more sustainable and resilient. To facilitate brownfield redevelopment, Governor Murphy also has initiated a set of tools, including a brownfield tax credit, and most recently, the Brownfield Loan Program, which Kevin mentioned earlier in his speech, which was approved by EDA. In addition to those programs, last March, EDA, in partnership with DEP, entered into an MOU to expand the Community Collaborative Initiative, known as CCI, a successful program that embeds DEP staff in 12 targeted communities to help them navigate complex environmental stressors and set a pathway for successful remediation and redevelopment. The Brownfield Center at NJIT will expand upon these efforts to provide similar resources beyond those 12 communities, really for all of the communities throughout New Jersey. If you think about it, we've got 565 municipalities, so we've got 12 that are part of CCI. To expand that program is necessary and needed. The center will provide guidance and resources to counties and municipalities to help them overcome challenges and enable them to navigate the brownfield redevelopment process, as well as I said before, to educate and engage communities around brownfield issues and also to build capacity. Under the proposed MOU, NJEDA will provide $200,000 to launch the Brownfield Center at NJIT. Under this MOU, within 1 year, NJIT will build out a resource center, including a robust website with tools for communities that currently does not exist within the state. Design and conduct 4 technical assistance trainings. This will be statewide, we're not political, so every single North, South, Central Jersey will be touched as part of this. We also provide customized brownfield roadmaps with strategies for each step of the journey to communities, and provide quarterly updates to EDA on the use of funds. Why NJIT? NJIT is uniquely positioned to support this initiative. The university's Brownfield program has helped hundreds of communities advance brownfield sites towards redevelopment by providing technical assistance to brownfield communities under cooperative agreement with the U.S. EPA. The Brownfield Center at NJIT will build upon this model of success by focusing on the challenge specific to New Jersey communities and targets assistance to accelerate brownfield remediation and community revitalization across the state. NJIT's Brownfield program has extensive experience in bringing tools, strategies, resources, partnerships, subject matter experts, and education to brownfield challenged communities, and has demonstrated with guidance, support, and assistance, these communities can successfully transform their brownfield sites into new uses that support community goals and catalyze economic development. DEP's Office of Brownfield and Community Revitalization is also very supportive of this initiative. They've been partnering with us. They realize the benefits of bringing this to the state. We are requesting the members' approval for a memorandum of understanding attached as Exhibit A between EDA and NJIT for EDA to provide funding of $200,000 for a 12-month period during which NJIT will establish the center, as I said before, create various technical assistance and resource products, host 4 brownfield workshops, create the website, and conduct other strategic planning efforts in partnership with NJEDA. And all of these materials will be owned by EDA at the end of this 12-month period. Please feel free to ask me any questions, but that completes my presentation.
Any questions for Todd?
Chair, just got a comment, and Todd, great presentation.
Thank you.
And, certainly it's needed, brownfields, but I think once the program's up and running, we need to take a look at the many closed factories we have throughout our state, but are not officially listed as brownfields.
Absolutely.
We know they're contaminated, but I think that's a resource that we could use purchase cheaply and develop.
And Fred, I think we talked about this in retirement, just when we're talking about brownfields here, we broaden, and the cabinet proposal is such broaden what we mean by candidates, it's not just in the dirt, which is important, we gotta get that, okay? But include what's in the hazardous building materials that are in there, we need to take care of in the right way. Whether that's PCBs, all kinds of things, so think about this as broadly as we can.
Excuse
Stuff
me,
to place.
so Brownsfield would just be concentrated on the properties alone, not the brick and mortar? Is that what you're saying, not the buildings?
I was saying the opposite, actually. So
Yeah.
we're-
But it's looking to
It's
expand?
more comprehensive.
Right.
Because if you're, particularly if you're talking about adaptive reuse and historic preservation, which is another important priority, and you've got no factory that someone wants to convert into lot apartments or something.
Right.
It's not just, there's maybe something spilled in the soil, that's important, but also there may be asbestos or lead paint or PCBs or stuff that need to be dropped in, but there are a huge barrier to redevelopment, so these are eligible costs of how we're thinking about it.
That's okay, thank you.
Any other questions or observations for Ty?
No, I just want to add, Mr. Chairman, that for the members of the public and the press, and I do this in other meetings, but just so those present here know that the policy committee had an opportunity to ask questions and vet this before it came to the board. So this is not the first time that members have had an opportunity to review the concept.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, we had a couple bites at the apple. Thank you. Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just on behalf of the department, thank you to Ty and Elizabeth and EDA for their continued partnership on Brownfield redevelopment. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Recusals, abstentions? All right, so moved. Next item on the agenda, the launch of the pilot grant program to support federal I-6 challenge programs. Jonathan Kennedy and Kevin DeSmet.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Kennedy. I'm a sector lead within the Office of Economic Transformation, part of the team under Brian Sabina that's responsible for developing and implementing programs that enhance the state's long-term competitiveness in key priority sectors. Before you today is a recommendation to establish a new grant scheme that will support New Jersey entities in applying for federal I-6 funding. I'll provide some opening remarks to help contextualise this initiative, specifically to explain its intent and its benefits, why this is a tool we think we should have in our toolkit, explain a little bit more about what the I-6 is, and then I'll pass to my colleague Kevin, who can talk through the mechanics of the proposed grant scheme, the due diligence that we propose to put in place. So in terms of the scheme that we're proposing, this speaks to a core principle at the heart of the Governor's State of Innovation Blueprint, which was launched, of course, in late 2018. Specifically, it recognises that building an innovation economy does not happen in a vacuum. Rather, it requires a supportive ecosystem of partners, capital, mentoring, etc. And it recognises the critical role that government can play in terms of building that connective tissue and facilitating cluster development. Additionally, this grant speaks to the fact that New Jersey historically has been underweight in terms of the funds, the federal funds it's been able to attract through schemes like the I-6 relative to Northeast peers. We did an analysis as part of this grant development, and we found that other states have been more effective at tapping into this particular federal funding stream. So we want to address that. Equally, it's worth mentioning that last year we had representation from entities that were looking to apply for I-6, came to our EDA naturally to gauge what support was available, and there were limits to the support we could provide because we didn't have a tailored program in place. So this tries to do that. In terms of New Jersey past awards through I-6, we've had an Exhibit D in your memorandums provides further detail on this, but as a state we've had 3 awards since the scheme's inception in 2014, and I should acknowledge Judith Sheff, who is behind one of those awards in 2016. So we've had some success, but I think there's an opportunity to be more successful. Just to summarise the context, so this scheme speaks to improving the competitiveness of New Jersey entities that seek federal funding to develop innovation clusters, and importantly, it helps them to maximise the federal funds that they're entitled to receive, should they be successful through that scheme. So what exactly are we proposing? Before you is a proposed grant program for $300,000. It will operate on a pilot basis for 1 year. To echo the Chair's comments, you know, the purpose of the pilot structure is that we can review and assess effectiveness after a year and then work out how we can improve. We propose that this will be capitalised through the Economic Recovery Fund, something we've been working with the Attorney Generals on in terms of structuring. Grants will be capped at $100,000 per applicant, with a maximum of 3 awards in the first year. Applicants will be vetted based on detailed selection criteria, with awards contingent on the applicant receiving a federal I-6 award. So money doesn't go out the door until the applicant actually is successful in being awarded federal funding. And in terms of the application process, we've been very mindful of the fact that the entities that apply for I-6 have a very short window in which to prepare their applications. So to the extent we can, we've ensured our eligibility criteria and process is consistent with the federal process, but at the same time it meets our requirements as a state. So a very quick overview of I-6. Some of you will be familiar with it. It's a key part of the US Economic Development Administration's Regional Innovation Strategy Program. It seeks to spur innovation capacity building across the US. Specifically, it's focused on proof of concept and commercialization programs. So business creation, helping businesses to not just get off the ground, but then to continue growing with a view to exporting their capabilities. Examples of activities supported, and by the way, activities can be physical, virtual, new or existing, include technology advisement, market evaluation, business planning, mentorship, improved access to early-stage capital, etc. Since its inception in 2014, I-6 has distributed $42 million in federal funding, awarded across 88 projects in 36 states, creating an estimated 7,160 jobs. And as mentioned, we've had 3 awards to date, so we've had some of that pot. I'll now pass to my colleague Kevin, who can step you through the mechanics of the actual proposed grant scheme.
So thank you, Jonathan. So yeah, I'll echo what Jonathan said. It's important to kind of think of this as a companion program to the federal I-6 grant. And so having said that, where possible, we've taken efforts to design our program so it's consistent with the federal program. Specifically, that takes kind of 3 forms. Excuse me, eligibility, review criteria, and then our timeline has been designed to accommodate what is the anticipated federal timeline. So as Jonathan indicated, this program is going to be capitalized through our Economic Recovery Fund, or EARF. The authority has limited grant-making ability. One of those sources of grant-making funds is EARF. However, that has some limitations on what uses are eligible for those funds. So that's the main kind of caveat to our program is the eligibility. So we've laid out 3 eligibilities, or 3 uses that would be consistent with EARF funds. 2 of those are fairly explicit in real estate partnerships or venture capital funds for the startup costs of businesses. And then there's a 3rd criteria, which would be locally supported economic development or economic development corporations. And so we've asked where applicants are relying upon that eligibility that they provide us with evidence that shows what support is being contributed by local government, and additionally what obligations the project partners have to local government, so that we know that the local government or to municipality or county is kind of an active project partner and not simply a So after receiving the applications and ensuring that they're all consistent from an eligibility standpoint, and then if they provide all the relevant documents, so in addition to a project narrative, we're asking for a detailed budget and then some evidence of funding commitments, so that we know that some of these projects are not at the pure genesis and they have some level of financial support before they come to us. Those projects that are deemed, or those applications that are deemed complete will then be given to a review committee. The review committee will be comprised of authority staff with relevant expertise. I'm sure many of you are familiar with some of the other iterations of these challenge-based grants we've done, and this will be kind of consistent with that model. So those complete applications will be scored, and we'll intend to give an award to the 3 highest scoring applicants that exceed the minimum score. As I alluded to earlier, we've kind of set up this evaluation criteria to mirror that of the US EDA program, so that applicants can kind of begin preparing the application that they'll ultimately submit to the federal government. So those 6 criteria evaluate on a 1 to 20 scale, and it's detailed further in Exhibit C in the packet. Our project supporting cluster connectivity, cluster diversity and engagement, project impacts from a job standpoint, from a new business creation, and from economic activities, cluster assets and infrastructure that exist at the project, sustainability and adaptability, so kind of like, will this project have the ability to kind of redirect and kind of recreate itself as things come up along the way, and just generally feasibility. In addition to this, we've kind of included 3 tiebreakers, so in the event that 2 or more applications have the same score, we'll be relying upon some just EDA public policy objectives to break that tie, and those are having a committed higher ed partner, the project being cited in an opportunity zone, or having the project kind of be focused on one of the targeted sectors that the EDA has identified. Again, as alluded to earlier, so the timeline is really set up so that we can accommodate the federal program. At present, the US EDA has not actually released a formal notice of funding availability, but they've done a series of kind of informational and preliminary outreach efforts. And so based upon those and the program historically, it's expected that final applications to the US EDA will be due somewhere in the beginning of April. So to back into that date, we've laid out a timeline in here, and this is basically just as soon as we're possibly able to post this application, so theoretically at the end of January or in February, we'll then give 30 days for applications to apply, and then we'll have a 2-week review period, and hope to award applications sometime in mid-March, giving people reasonable time to kind of incorporate that award into their federal submission. It's important to note that should the EDA come out with a dramatically different timeline, US EDA, we will amend our timeline accordingly. The last point that I wanted to touch on is the idea of delegated authority. So from time to time, the staff has asked the board to delegate authority to make final approvals or awards of programs. This request is being made kind of to accommodate that timeline, so we don't have to identify the awardees and then come back to the board to make that final determination. The rationale being twofold. One, we've kind of laid out explicitly what the criteria is that we're going to rely upon to make these awards, and secondarily, the $100,000 in grant funding per 3 awards is consistent with the level of kind of programs that have relied upon that delegation historically. And then in closing, I'll say that, so this is a pilot program, as has kind of been noted previously. So I think we have an opportunity to look at the volume of applications that we receive for our program, and then subsequently what the kind of success rate is on a federal level, and then we can look at next year what are maybe some program fixes and kind of tweaks to make it more impactful. So in closing, members are requested to approve the creation and implementation of the NJ I-6 Challenge Support Program on a pilot basis, capitalized with $300,000 from the Economic Recovery Fund. Members are also requested to approve delegation of authority to award I-6 support.
Any questions for Jonathan and Kevin?
Question, just to make sure that we as board members will receive an update monthly on any actions taking place.
Yeah, and when we ultimately make the awards, we'll bring that to you guys as an informational kind of.
Thank you very much.
I have more of a general question, and this is a conversation we're having elsewhere in state government. I'm just curious what we are doing. Jonathan noted that we're sort of underweight in terms of being able to attract federal funds. What other efforts or what strategic efforts are going on within EDA to attract more federal funding? And again, this is a broad question because we are looking at this elsewhere as well.
Thank you, Ken. Great question. So one of the things I'd highlight is we brought, late last year or this year? We brought a grant writer on to applying for federal funds. As you know, it's a bit of a challenge. It requires real work. And so we brought a grant writer on to help us attack that December our application for a brownfield grant or revolving loan program through the EPA. We're in charge on the applications and then we'll hear at some point. So broadly, that's high on our radar screen of things we can find. There's not a ton of federal economic development money, tons of infrastructure, lots of stuff that we want to be good partners to, and that resource as a grant writer, we're open to pending capacity, lending, partnering with other agencies if we can be helpful in advancing anyone else's efforts.
Lots of federal labor money. Talk about that Tuesday.
Tim, excuse me, have we built stronger relationships with our congressional legislators to see if they can alert us to more opportunities that we may not be aware of?
Short answer, yes. Broadly, type note on that.
One of the other things I will say, we have Monica Pham, who's operating as the Deputy Director for the Governor's DC office. So we have staff that's actually embedded in DC who connects us with the congressional members. We work very closely with Monica, so anytime there is no for any other grant releases, federal grant releases that are coming out, we work with them directly, and also for letters of support. So we're building up that relationship, specifically with congressional member Congressman Kim, who serves in the small business sector. So we are working closely with our congressional members, and we'll keep on growing that relationship. And also with the addition of Christina, who Tim mentioned earlier, who's in the back, is working very closely with Monica as well.
Other questions?
I guess the last point on that is that historically, the Commission on Science, Innovation, and Technology has been an important body that has provided matching funding on a grant basis to projects to leverage more federal dollars. Their first program, the SBIR STTR matching program, is designed to do just that for small businesses applying for federal grants. You could imagine as the Commission continues to build under Judith's and the Commissioner's leadership that additional programs that leverage federal dollars could be.
Just a comment, and want to give kudos to the staff for thinking to align the guidelines and criteria to the same guidelines and criteria that's used at the federal level. Oftentimes it's burdensome to kind of go through one process with the state at the same time, especially given the fact that you guys are anticipating that the federal deadline is 2 weeks after this deadline is due. So just appreciate the thoughtfulness behind that and not wanting to be burdensome.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Or, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? So moved. Next item on the agenda, Office of Economic Transformation. Venture Fund Program Policy Updates, Tim Rollins.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you today to offer a recommendation for approval and a modification to request to a component of our current venture fund policy. The venture fund review process relies substantially on our venture fund rating matrix to evaluate and recommend a commitment amount to a venture fund up to the EEA's policy limit of 10% of a fund or $10 million subject to available EEA funding. The first update seeks to adjust the scaling of the recommended commitment output within the current framework, and again, within the current policy maximum of 10%, basically. The mechanics of the current model skew the recommendations currently to the lower end of the range, and this would provide an adjustment that considers EEA's success investing in venture funds over the last several years, from an economic development as well as financial perspective, as well as the incidence of larger fund sizes in the market, would permit the EDA to maintain an important presence among these venture funds. It will also offer the opportunity to increase the magnitude of investment that can get that limit. Second, we're proposing 2 other modifications to the current language in the existing rating model. There are specifically 14 criteria on which a fund is evaluated, specifically history investing in New Jersey and sourcing in New Jersey. Implementation of these changes will actually create greater equitability in application of the model, actually. So we are requesting approval to affect these modifications.
Any questions for Tim? All right, motion to approve. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? So moved. Tim's going to stick with us. Next item on the agenda, Activate Ventures 2 Annex Fund Investment.
Thank you very much. And so the recommendation for Activate follows obviously from the just approved.
You may recall, but this the group was under that.
We're recommending a commitment of 8% of the target fund size, up to $800,000 to Activate Ventures Fund 2 Annex. Activate Ventures is an early stage manager focused on investments in the Mid-Atlantic with offices in Bethlehem, PA, and New York. The firm was formed in 2017 through the merger of Originate Ventures and Milestone Ventures, founded by Glenn Bressner and Todd Petrie and Ed Goodman, respectively. The firms were respectively formed in the early 2000s, but each of the individual investors has collectively 90 years of investment experience, so substantial experience there. Activate Fund 2 Annex is a top-up fund raised to supplement the capital raised with Activate Fund 2, which has successfully exited one of its early investments. And to the firm's credit, their existing investors have come back to request this Annex Fund here, which is a real credit to the investor. That early exit was a company called Digital Pharmacist, which was actually the merger of Texas-based RxWiki and New Jersey, Newark-based Talent Manager, actually, so it was a real success for New Jersey as well. NJEDA is an investor in prior Milestone Fund 4. We've also had the opportunity to support a number of Originate and Milestone's prior companies directly, and again through our fund commitment to Fund 4 as well. This is an experienced manager we know well. They have a long, successful history investing in New Jersey. They've been great active partners with the EDA, participating in nearly all of our India Founders and Funders events. They've demonstrated strong performance with a consistent focus on early stage software and other identified key sectors for the state of New Jersey. The manager already has a ready pipeline of deals in New Jersey, having completed one investment in the state already. So this commitment may be deemed a powerful catalyst to further support the general growth and financial gain in the state of New Jersey. So we are requesting approval to authorize this commitment to Activate Fund 2 Annex.
Any questions for Tim? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstention? So moved.
Next, I have one quick one. We talk a lot about the capital and innovation economy here at this board frequently. Thank you for two great presentations on a few dimensions of that. Obviously, the governor has a proposal for the Evergreen Fund, which continues to be an important priority for him. The piece of the equation we have not yet solved, and I'm not promising we will solve it, we will certainly do some stuff about it, is gaps that persist. A gap doesn't mean a fair way to describe it. The desert of venture capital that is available and being provided to companies founded women and communities of color, particularly communities of color. Last year launched a partnership with Golden Seed, which is focused on women-founded companies. Stay tuned for some hopefully impactful initiatives and efforts, first quarter, earlier than that maybe, anyway, in February, with some particular efforts around founders of color.
Can I just add an additional comment? So while EDA is looking to continue to kind of explore the equity framework throughout its programs, policies, and investments, I just want to, and you know this, encourage you to make sure that that is extended to fund managers and other things as well.
Tim or Kathy or Brian should comment in more detail. We made some adjustments to our framework that's been describing in September or October. I forget that endeavor more to do that leadership strategy. Whether we got it right. To judge, we'll keep refreshing that and taking it seriously.
Continue to work in partnership with state's office of diversity and inclusion to ensure that whatever we're doing from a regulations perspective and a public implementation perspective, it aligns with the state's broader diversity inclusion strategy.
But if there's specific recommendations on how we do that, you could have suggested it before.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Next item on the agenda, bond projects. David Lawyer, 2019 carry forward request.
Good morning. All right, so the purpose of this memo is to request board approval to file IRS Form 8328, which is the final step in the carry forward process of unused 2019 private activity bond cap allocations. Out of the $75.9 million allocation that was originally approved, the authority used $1.03 million, resulting in this unused allocation of $74.9 million. On December 19th of last year, New Jersey Treasury approved this carry forward election, and this allocation of carry forward will expire on December 31st of 2022. The amount of unused allocation that is carried forward in subsequent years has a 3-year life. At the end of last year, our 2016 allocation of $48 million expired. So as of today, the EDA has a total of $175 million, rounded, of carry forward, comprised of $48 million from 2017, $52 million from 2018, and $75 million from 2019. You will see in your package a copy of Form 8328, which has been completed to reflect the final allocated use of 2019 carry forward. The allocations are based on EDA staff's best estimate of future bond activity that may be eligible to utilize the carryover. Finally, in our recent request to Treasurer, we have requested for a 2020 allocation of $90 million.
Any questions for Dave? Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? So moved. Next item on the agenda, loans, grants, and guarantees. David.
Thank you. This project is comprised of remedial investigation, totaling $111,300. The purpose of remedial investigation is to determine the severity of contamination and what actions need to be completed to remediate the site. NJDP has reviewed the project and determined 100% of the total cost are eligible, technically eligible. The applicant has requested a HDSOF loan for the cost pertaining to remedial investigation at the project site and plans to sell the property upon the completion of remediation. What makes this loan request unique relative to past loan requests under this program is that the loan proceeds will be used to cover the cost of investigation. Typically, loan proceeds under this program are used to cover costs of remedial action, and in some cases, a combination of action and a reimbursement of the investigation costs that were previously covered by the applicant. In this application, the bar doesn't have the financial wherewithal to cover any of the remedial investigation costs and has requested a loan to cover the same. Since we are unable at this time to determine a budget and time frame for remedial action, which typically follows the investigation, additional collateral beyond the project site to secure the loan has been offered. Loan to value based solely on the project location is 81%. However, when additional collateral is considered, loan to value becomes 47%. This loan will have a 10-year term, requiring interest payments during the term of the loan, and the outstanding principal balance due at maturity. The interest rate will be based on the federal discount rate set at the time of closing, time of approval or closing, whichever is lower, with a floor of 5%.
Any questions for Dave?
I have one. So this money will be used just to investigate the hazardous condition on that property?
That is correct.
And then if there is, where would they get the money to clean it up?
They can go back to DEP and apply for another loan for action. And then they would deem those costs to be technically eligible, which is the process first before it comes over to us to complete our financial review.
And then this is a 10-year loan, so if the property is sold, it's a lien on the property, that's to whoever's buying it.
Correct, and our loan will be paid off.
Has this fund ever been used for remedial investigation before?
Investigation, not that I recall. As a loan, not that I recall. However, we have provided loans that reimbursed investigation costs that were previously covered by the applicant, and then the loan were to cover remedial action.
Other questions?
Chair, I have a question. So my recollection with regard to the program is they have to not be a responsible party for the contamination. Here, just looking at it, the prior business was reconditioned drums, which right away conjures up potential contamination. Do we look at did this buyer do the preliminary assessment required under the DEP statute to assert that innocent purchaser defense? Do we ask that and review that?
Right, so that analysis takes place at DEP. There was a preliminary assessment that was completed, actually 2 preliminary assessments, and we reviewed both. This was not the responsible party. It was a separate company completely that did collect and triple wash drums that were used in the food industry. However, the contamination came from other aspects of the business.
Okay. So the PA didn't identify. Did the PA identify this? Is that where this came from? The identification of the contamination through the preliminary assessment?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you just also address the risk rating?
Correct. So this follows our traditional risk rating model that we use for all loans. And it produces a default risk rating based upon the parameters that we input into the model. But no risk rating model, you may have heard me say this before, a loan committee, but no loan risk rating model is perfect. There may be factors and assumptions that go beyond what the black and white model will tell you. And so in this case, we have a loan to value that is based upon a property that's not fully remediated. We have an individual where I don't want to get too technical or confidential at a public board meeting, but cash flow is questionable. And so based upon that, we can override the risk rating to something worse. It doesn't change the interest rate because the interest rate is fixed in this program, but it does determine the reserve and future losses. And so we are recognizing that there is an elevated level of credit risk in this project. And so instead of the default risk rating, which was A, we revised it to B so that our reserve and future losses is greater.
Any other questions?
So the applicant intends to sell. This initial loan is for the investigation. They'll likely have to end up going back for an additional loan for remediation. So was there an appraisal done just to be able to give some level of confidence that he'll be in a position to sell in both the current value of the home and then the additional loan?
Well, on the project site, an appraisal is not required. It's just not a requirement under the program. But when the site has been fully remediated and they come back to us for a loan, that is something that we could consider. What is the as remediated value of the property that we can incorporate that into our analysis? Because right now we're just showing the tax assessed value, which goes back, could be decades. Since we're not going to require an appraisal on these properties, because to be fair to all of our applicants, it isn't something that we have required. We try to be flexible and look for additional collateral that can support the loan and a reasonable expectation on what the budget will be for the remedial action work that needs to be done to see if we can have everything covered.
Any more questions for David? Motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? All right, so moved. David will be staying petroleum underground storage tank. Yeah, this is a promotion. He's really good.
We have 2 residential underground storage tank grant requests totaling $279,867. The proceeds will be used to remove 2 leaking underground storage tanks and perform the required remediation. And the information of both are contained in the project summaries in the packet.
Any questions for David?
So I can remember a time when there was a backlog in this program, what is the status of the fund generally, and are these the only applicants pending, or are there, do you know what the status of the fund is generally?
Yes, there is the appropriation for the program was much greater this year. And so this program can be expanded out to more applicants as they give us complete applications. And there certainly is a backlog of applications in the program. It's just a matter of timing on when they give us the information that we request and require to complete the financial.
We can get all that detail.
Okay.
All right. Other questions? Okay, motion to approve.
I'll move it.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? Thank you, David. So moved. Next item on the agenda, real estate, Juan Burgos, item New Jersey Bioscience Center lease agreement. Now, I'd observe for our new members, Juan understands that this is the coldest room in Trenton. He always comes prepared with a sweater and a jacket. And there have been times I have been desperately envious of him.
Anytime you want to leave a fair market exchange for my sweater and your BMW.
I made that trade 2 months ago. I'm okay today.
Timing is everything.
The real estate department asking the authority to approve a lease with Abacor LLC, who is already an existing tenant in the step-out labs in Building 4 at the Bioscience Center. They have a leasehold for 4,500 square feet, and that leasehold is set to expire at the end of February 2022. That lease will terminate when that space is vacated and they occupy the new space under this lease once it's approved. The proposed new lease is in the same building on the first floor for a lab office space of 11,522 square feet, which was formerly occupied by Chromacell Corporation. Chromacell vacated that space under board approval in January of 2019. The lease is for 64 months at $31 triple net, and the rent would increase 3% annually. We estimate that the present value of the lease discounted at 5% after discounting for the broker's commission is approximately $1.75 million. Based on TLS's review of the financial condition of Abacor, the leasehold will also require 4 months rent, CAM, and pilot, which is the equivalent of $172,704 as a security deposit. We are not providing any tenant improvements, and Abacor is performing their own tenant improvements in the space, which our group will supervise and approve. Abacor is a pharmaceutical research and development firm, and its primary business is active pharmaceutical ingredients and abbreviated new drug applications. It's a subsidiary of RK Pharma Solutions, who's also the guarantor of the lease, and projected for the end of 2019, they projected they would have revenue of approximately $17 million. So that's pretty much the terms and conditions of the lease, if there's any questions.
Any questions for Juan?
Yeah, I got a question, Juan. So Abacor is going to perform their own renovations to the facility.
That's correct.
How will we be involved and will prevailing wage?
Our lease requires that they submit their plan, that we approve it, and then anything that's required to be performed by prevailing wage will get a number and appropriately decided by the authority.
Thank you, Juan.
Other questions for Juan? All right, motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals, abstentions? Thank you, Juan. Juan has done it. Board member, Tim?
Yeah, just mentioning, for our new members, we provide, Kevin and Fred had a discussion earlier about delegated authority, which program where we have, the board has delegated to me on behalf of the staff, to take certain actions and approve certain things, including loans under a certain threshold and a variety of other actions. Each month in your packet, you'll get a set of memos like this that describe what's gone on under those activities. We'll go through in detail, happy to answer any questions today offline. And this is how we provide that reporting of what we're up to, besides the guys that come for a yay or nay here at this point. So you have two in your packets today, one about real estate division, delegated authority, and another around loans, from direct loan and premier lender programs.
Thank you, Jim. We're now going to move to the public comment session. We have two members of the public who signed up. First member, Kendrick Shaw, is an elected school board trustee and consultant from Jersey City.
I'm right here, right on time.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
That's quite an entrance.
Good morning.
For the new year and the new members, you want to just remind everyone of the public comment?
They have public comment policy. Yeah, folks have 3 minutes just to make your comments.
Sure.
I can provide based on my discretion.
Sure.
Latitude in that.
Sure.
But let's try to keep it through. Thank you.
Yeah, it might be just 10 seconds over. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. New board trustees, congratulations, welcome. I'm a new board trustee myself as well, and also board chair and cabinet members. I wanted to speak to an item that may have came before you or may not, but I'll start with public facilities are an important asset to the 691 school districts across the state of New Jersey. It is those facilities where staff and students build communities and learn essential skills that allow children to thrive and become leaders of tomorrow. I was perplexed to learn that a local nonprofit was interested in taking one of those critical facility assets to create a new facility that strays away from the mission of a nonprofit, which is to assist others in a time of need. In addition to serving on the school board, I work with various nonprofits within the areas of diversity and inclusion, business development, and outreach. The recurring theme that I would see at these nonprofits are transparency and the ability to measure effectiveness through KPIs such as fundraising ROI, number of beneficiaries served, program efficiency, and none of this information was available on the DevCo website. Given this entity any form of subsidies or assistance begs the question of, is this a smart way of doing business for residents of New Brunswick, educators, students, and staff? Organizations of this scope should not attempt to take from the less fortunate to earn profits in excess of millions while squeezing the coffers of public entities such as the EDA. Nonprofit organizations have multiple areas of service, none of which depicts nonprofit organizations taking a public facility for profit and public education in a good light. Private organizations such as DevCo play a bigger role than ever before in public facilities being redeveloped and taken away at the expense of those less fortunate. I have a few questions / comments surrounding DevCo asking the EDA for any assistance. According to a local journalist in New Brunswick, DevCo indebted the city of New Brunswick over $400 million in the past 10 years for all private projects, none of them community-based, which would mean city taxpayers was left on the hook for reckless projects, including a fresh grocery store that currently sits vacant. I hope the EDA does the right thing and just don't become a political player for a New Brunswick development company that's focused on profit projects and not community interests. Also, I would like to know if previously did the EDA fund any projects with DevCo or help out, and I would expect to see a full accounting of that. And at the conclusion of this meeting, I wanted to know, is there anyone I can follow up with at EDA? Thank you.
Kendrick, thank you. So if you have time and you're able to stick around, we'll have somebody, maybe Danielle, you can do this, just follow up with Kendrick to just understand more specifically about particular projects in New Brunswick that he has concerns about. And then we'll follow up on it and we'll make sure that we stay in a dialogue.
I can stick around. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. All right, sure.
The second member of the public is Charlie Kritobel of New Brunswick Today. Did I get your last name right? Close enough. Give it to me the right way.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Charles Cradaville, New Brunswick Today, community newspaper available online at NewBrunswickToday.com, and I am a resident of New Brunswick as well. Congratulations to the new members and all the best. Had the pleasure of being with Mr. Sullivan and some of the others at the Jobs NJ event yesterday. It was great to treat to see something like that in my county. I have had a bad experience with a DevCo project, an EDA project in my community, and I hope that you'll be a little bit lenient with the time because I have done a lot of research, and I want to bring to your attention some problems in the hopes of improving practices and outcomes as we move forward. This board, I believe, was misled by a confusing shell game that took place over the course of 2010 and 2011. I know many of you were not here at that time, but I do think it's important that we learn from the past and try to improve. So the reason I say that, I am talking about the fresh grocer supermarket that the last gentleman spoke about. And, so there's three main problems that I want to identify. The first is that in this case, totally unconnected and unrelated projects were lumped into the same application and treated as some kind of comprehensive plan under the urban transit hub tax credit program. And I do have just a map of the three projects so you can see for yourself that they're not adjacent. I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but if you can just take one and pass it on, I'd appreciate it. Those are the three projects there. The second item is that the developer was allowed to come back before the board to get a second larger bite at the apple, essentially getting a greater allocation of tax credits for less investment, even though they had been proceeding with a dramatically changed project without telling the board for over a year. And then finally, the largest site of the three that you see on that map is a commercial building that was allowed into the residential program by playing games, magically removing 805 parking spaces from that part of the project, and not physically removing them, but just theoretically removing them from the calculations. The building itself is 81% parking, and 0% residential, for what it's worth. So the there's just a few facts you need to know. The Urban Transit Hub Tax Credit Program had two different components. The stated goals are different for commercial projects versus residential projects. The goal of commercial projects is job creation. The goal of the residential part of the program is to build housing on some of the precious, valuable land near transit hubs to get more people living in downtowns and riding the transit. So for this reason, the EDA only makes an effort to verify or enforce job creation claims for commercial projects because of those stated different goals. But by the very nature of the program, developing things near train stations, the projects are almost always a mix of uses. To qualify for the residential part of the program, you have to be at least 50.1% residential in terms of the total square footage. And I will let you know the EDA did support these three projects with a $76.6 million tax credit award. It was initially 21, then it was 55, and then it became 76.6. And some of that did go towards the fresh grocer supermarket. I lived across the street from this. I watched the entire block get destroyed. I watched them build the new building rather swiftly. I worked there. I got one of the jobs that were created. I was one of 300 people hired to work in this poorly planned, poorly run supermarket. It was a bad job. I only made $9 an hour, and the company routinely violated state labor laws. They gave up. They bailed after a year and a half in New Brunswick, leaving the landlord, a public entity, holding the bag. They still owe $1 million, over $1 million to the New Brunswick Parking Authority. They placed that vacant for another year. Then another operator came in. They ran a bare bones operation with a small staff and also failed. They owe $750,000 to the Parking Authority, and the space has been vacant since June. Now, this agency, I believe, is currently working with the very same developer to redevelop a massive site right across the street from the failed supermarket. And common sense would dictate that there's questions that need to be answered about that past project before you move forward with new projects with the same developer, which is, again, New Brunswick Development Corporation, DevCo. So in looking into this, after the store closed for the second time, the first thing I asked about was if the EDA checked up on the job creation. And I was a little surprised to find that this program, or this building had been lumped into the residential program, even though it's not residential. So the main issue I have is that it's not residential. There's no housing, it's a supermarket, it's a gym with a pool, it's a convenience store, and it's 1,200 parking spaces. 0 housing units. The vast majority of the building is parking, again, 81%. So I won't belabor all the history, but it did come before the board, was approved for the $21 million in January of 2010. They came back seeking $55 million and lumping in these other 2 projects. That was in February and March of 2010. The board eventually, memo was prepared on May 10th, 2010, and unanimously approved the $55.1 million figure there, which was 20% of eligible capital investment. But just a few months later, the New Brunswick Parking Authority came before our planning board in New Brunswick, and no mention was made of any housing in the wellness project. What the EDA had been told was there was going to be 80 units of housing in that project. And I followed up, and the NBPA board and the executive director have no recollection of ever being told that there was ever going to be any housing in the project. So this seemed like a real switcheroo. In your annual report that year, you touted job creation from this program, and New Brunswick was one of the main places that was utilizing this program. And I do have documents that I obtained through Oprah, and I'm glad the backlog's getting addressed. I did get my documents in December, and the documents dated June 6, 2011 showed loan closing projected for just 3 days later, and the first draw of funds on July 5th, 2011. The EDA was still under the impression that there was going to be housing in this project.
Charlie, just a time check, because we're well over 3 minutes. Is this coming to a close?
Yes, sir.
Shortly?
Thank you.
And then
Yeah.
obviously the follow-up's going to be, we'd like all the information that you've summarized here, or a copy of your notes, if you're cool with that.
Of course.
So we can follow up and do our job on our end.
Sure. And I will give you the final board memo here that was November 9th, 2011, when they came back. The project was already under construction. It's 2 pages here, so if you just take one of each and pass it on. They came back and admitted, well, the project's already under construction. They're actually not going to do the housing. And oh, by the way, a law got changed, so now they're entitled to 35% instead of 20%. So they come back, they get a larger allocation for less investment, and oh, by the way, we're going to do 79 less housing units. And the board memo doesn't mention that one of the 3 sites now no longer includes any housing. It kind of glosses over that fact. So I don't know if the board gets a copy of the application or reviewed the whole thing, but the board memo wasn't clear that one of these projects was now entirely commercial and parking.
Okay.
And then just to finish up, the biggest problem is that, to qualify for the residential part of the program, you have to be 50.1% residential. And in their own calculations here, you can see in the document I'm about to give you, this is from their application, all 3 projects combined, 73% commercial, 27% residential. And then they have another table where they say, quote, maximize parking allocation, and they just remove 805 parking spaces from the calculation, and then lo and behold, it's exactly 50.1% residential. They didn't actually remove any parking spaces. There's no, and I have, I'll also share with you my emails with the head of DevCo, asking him for an explanation of what the methodology is and not getting it. So my concern is that, commercial project was allowed in the residential program. The biggest job creation component of that project failed terribly, costing our city immensely and taking up that valuable real estate. And there's really no mechanism to enforce the job creation because it was allowed to go through under residential, and I think it was done in a very misleading way, and I hope it never happens again. And I still have a story I'm working on, and I'm going to need answers from EDA officials on it. And so I do thank you for your time, and I'm happy to continue the dialogue.
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. Kendra, are you related? Is this?
No, but
just a coincidence.
Can I just, the most important comment or disclosure is those are my personal beliefs and not representative of the board that I sit on.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Charlie, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you. Much appreciated.
And I would just ask that there be follow-up with the treasury on this.
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna, that brings public comment session to a close. I'm gonna move to enter executive session. We'll receive the board will receive attorney-client privilege regarding ongoing legal inquiries, and the minutes of which will become available and the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Can I get a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Refuses, abstentions? All right, so moved. We're gonna move into executive session. Thank you, members of the public. Thank you, staff.